Welcome to the Ops Experts Club with Aaron, Terryn, and Savannah. This podcast will take you behind the scenes of some of the finer details of multi-million-dollar companies. These ops experts have dealt with operations for scaling companies and well-established businesses with anywhere from small to large teams. If you've ever been deep into the details of a major company, then you know how much it takes, and these conversations are just for you. Welcome to the Ops Experts Club podcast.
Welcome, Ben, another Ops Experts Club.
Ops Experts Club.
Thanks for joining us again this week. Last week, we had an awesome Q&A one-on-one interview with Eliza from Prime Corporate Services. So this week, we're doing just a Q&A on reviewing our conversation with Eliza. So great conversation with Eliza, not only from PCS, but she also gave us a great overview of, her entire work career, which was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, I didn't know that she'd been in so many different industries. It was actually, especially the auto industry. You don't usually meet people who are in the higher ups of the auto industry. So it was actually
right.
I kind of wish she'd talked about it more. I was like, wait, tell me,
Yeah.
What are the inner workings of, of that whole world? It is, again, completely different than what we do. So yeah, it was really interesting to see. And honestly, interesting to see how you could tell that she brought so many things from, what was it, Qualtrics, that she took to the next place, and she brought that to the next place. And, yeah, it was just fascinating to see how much she's learned across all the industries, which is probably what makes her such freaking great EA.
Yeah, I love seeing someone like her in a position she's accepted, but that she knows for a fact is only temporary. She's like, okay, I'll be your EA for a bit, but just so you know, I got bigger plans for myself and for you. Like, this is just the start of me with your company. Like, I'm not going to be an EA forever. This is just me starting out with you. I have big plans.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see somebody really motivated and, their upward mobility and the confidence they have and using a position like that just to get the groundwork of the business before trying to do bigger and better things with them.
Yeah, because she said she was in the automotive for what? It was like 5.5 years, 5 years or so.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, and it's no surprise. Like if you talk with her for even just a few minutes, like she's a freaking go-getter. Like she's got clients who's going to make them work.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of clients pick up EAs, and some EAs, it's a bit more of a long start for them to grasp the business and the concepts. But from all the meetings I was in with our weekly L10 meetings, she seemed to get it right away and was an asset from day one. It's fun hearing about, her passions as she is a powerful woman in her workspace of trying to empower other people in her workspace, especially the automotive industry. She mentioned, very male dominated in the higher ups with the suits and the VPs and executives. So she's got strong passion in empowering women at the workspace and trying to make sure that their voice is heard, that they're part of the collective effort of the upper echelon of people making decisions. Because, if you don't have, a good split men and women, that's half the population. Why not have half the people there?
Hello, Aaron.
Aaron, welcome.
Guys, I'm going to give full disclosure here on Ops Experts Club, just that I'm not the best dog owner. I love my dogs. I spend a lot of time petting my dogs, being good to my dogs. I don't walk my dogs a ton. You just open the door and let them run around out back and fall and chase their brothers. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's how they get their energy out. So when I take them on any kind of adventure, any kind of walk, they get so excited and then they feed off each other. So then they're both like, it's a total circus. You would laugh if you saw me walk my dogs. So, and I think that just so you guys, I heard what you're talking about Eliza coming in and dominated industry and coming into PCS. I can tell you this, because we vetted her, right? Like we recruited her, and of all the people that we recruited, she was a standout. We got her to interview. I think that what most useless about her was just that she had to jump over a lot of the rules. And that's what made us lean into her as a candidate, because we're like, if this lady can conquer those kinds of things, those kinds of odds, man, because it's not just that she stood up for women in the workplace and wanting to make decisions, all those things. Like we can all have personal goals around that, but it was that she got out there with a megaphone, and started doing these big gatherings of empowering ladies in the automobile industry. And they started doing events around it. And it was like this young gal in her mid-20s coming up in this heavily dominated, very old system of doing business is making waves like that. That's somebody we want on our team. And I think that was a really big decision maker for Steve.
Yeah, so we're just moving along here. Another great thing we learned about Eliza, just what she learned from managing multiple visionaries at once, which, it seems like we do a lot of that when having different clients, and we're only doing it part-time for each client. Can imagine doing that full time.
Ben and I talk about all the time. It's like being a grandparent, right? You're like, hey, drop off the grandkids and then come and pick them up. Yeah, I mean, like, it's like, we don't have to deal with them all the time, but like full time, like handling hurricanes is not easy work. So definitely kudos to managing multiples.
and fast moving hurricanes at that. I feel like if in her spot, I would be like, man, if I can wrangle these guys, like what can I not do? Like that's got to be so. I mean, I was talking to one of my buddies the other day, and he was starting a new business venture, and he said, "Is it weird that I feel like that this is just going to work, and it's just a matter of time on how long it takes to work?" I was like, "No, that's what experience does when you get into a new venture or a new industry. Like she moved from automobile to marketing and all that. Like at a certain point, you go, I just know this is going to work because I have the experience and the years of the toil and trouble like that I've gone through to make it work. To be able to have that confidence, be like, no, this will work. It may be a matter of time, but it will work. And there's no worries about it. She sort of, I think, what was interesting about watching that interview is she just kind of exudes that confidence. Like when she talks, she's been through the ringer a few times. She's got the experience. She's wrangled all these multiple visionaries. Like she knows what she's doing. And it's not a matter of like arrogance. Just like, no, she's supremely confident in that she's going to do a good job and be successful. And it was super fun to watch, just kind of emanate from her.
We're in a very similar situation to Eliza, right? Where we're helping manage the deals for very powerful women and that are leading businesses, right? And you look at them, they're like, they make so much money. They've been so successful. Who am I to be able to start managing their life? You know what I mean? But I think at the same time, no. Their life needs you. Like they're not good at what you're good at. That's why they're hiring you. Yeah, I mean, so I think it always surprises me when I walk into a room. Some of the biggest clients I've tried to win, when you can get beyond like you're trying to explain to each other what you do and try to prove to each other that you could be a good fit. Once you get into that next level where you start talking about the doing, right? It's so crazy to me to watch these powerful leaders become like little kids again. And they're like, almost like embarrassed about walking you into their messy room. You know what I mean? They're like, okay, so listen, I know you're here to help me. And I totally get it. Like you're good at this. I'm not good at this. Just don't judge me. Like when we get in there, right? Like, just don't judge my life. Don't judge my email inbox. Don't judge the way I'm managing my scheduler. Don't judge the way that I'm showing up at calls. Don't judge the way, and like, cause you're going to see all of the things that they hide from the majority of people, but now they're bringing you into this very intimate layer of understanding what's going on underneath the hood. And I think that just to dispel that fear from visionaries, listen, nobody's got everything together the way it looks like they've got everything together. Nobody's as buttoned up as it looks like they're buttoned up. Every single client we've rolled into, I've had that same experience with, where they're like, hey, just don't judge me. Okay. Or, hey, like, it's so crazy to me because these powerful, powerful leaders, like they have insecurities too. You know what I mean? They've got like fears too. They've got, just all these different pieces they're working on too. And it's cool when you can recognize Terryn's such a badass at what Terryn does. So no matter who Terryn's plugging into, I'm guaranteeing if this person is looking for somebody that does what Terryn does, Terryn is going to be able to meet that need probably 10 times what their expectation is, because they don't even really know what to expect because that's not their skill set. That's not what they're good at. So Terryn rolling up to the table is going to bring so many more tools than he even realizes because they're not good at this, And so Eliza, I think coming into Steve's life has been awesome to watch because Steve was looking for somebody that's going to complement. He's already such a high level leader. He's already so powerful. Steve's one of the most powerful networkers I've ever met in a very non-slimy, weird networking way, right? I know all three of us, we don't super love like network marketing style personalities necessarily. That's the opposite of Steve. Steve is like one of the most heart-centered dudes I've ever met, but is still able to network so powerfully. But he needs somebody to help hold all the details because when you network that powerfully, you lose contacts, And so it's Steve, some of the first questions we asked Eliza coming in is, hey, so Steve's biggest pain point is getting it from first base to second base when it comes to meeting new contacts. Like Steve can get us on first base all day long when it comes to meeting new people. But it's how are we going to communicate them downstream? How are we not going to miss opportunities downstream? How are we going to make sure they weave into our fabric at Prime, downstream? That's not Steve's gift, So it's like, how can he put, Eliza in contact with the right people that can nurture it into the next conversations? I think that's the powerful thing.
Yeah, I think you say it pretty well. Usually I hear you use the term a lot, keep them in their brilliance. And that's really what we're all doing here. Anybody directly or indirectly under the visionary, as long as we can keep them in their brilliance, get them out of the minutia, the things they shouldn't be doing, the things other people can do, you'll find success in your job, and then success with the company, and the company will have success. Definitely something that's always the goal. Ops directors, project managers, EAs, anybody coming in helping, just make sure you keep them in their brilliance.
Keep them out of the things that aren't, right? Is that where you're going to go, Ben? Like, that's only helping them and us, right? Like, you don't want them playing in your pond.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, it's pretty easy to see as we've been in their L10s, going over their scorecard for the last, 11, 12 months, that the introduction of Eliza, I mean, it's a pretty strong correlation with how much they are just blowing up right now. I mean, they're posting records, every week? Every week, Terryn comes in and says, oh, another record week. And I think there's a very strong correlation there with getting Eliza and getting their team set in their lanes well, so that Steve can run out ahead and start, doing what Steve does best, and networking and bringing in connections, bringing in partners, and their team is actually working as a well-oiled machine because everybody's got their set lanes. And I think it really shows just in their scorecard every week, and PCS is doing great before, Eliza and we came in, and I don't want to toot our own horns and saying that we made PCS, but we definitely had a hand in helping lift and grease the gears so they could just, double, triple what they've been doing in the past.
I will say that's an interesting way to look at it, is because I think obviously you always wonder how much can one person do, but I think that introducing an Eliza into a Steve life probably kept Steve from going to Darren for a bunch of things, right? Because Darren, as director of ops, was probably who Steve was going to a lot previous. And in releasing that releasing that direct ask all the time from Steve to Darren, and now pushing that to Eliza, who's able to hold the space as a badass, frees Darren up. So it not only is freeing Steve to stay in his brilliance, in his lane, but also creates a lane into brilliance for Darren to run in and not be slowed down by requests that really are probably not the right level for his level within the organization. I know a lot of times people poo-poo like org charts and job descriptions and like it's a waste of time, or like, hey, just get in there and get stuff done. Like, what are we all talking about? How long are we going to have meetings talking about this? I've heard half a dozen entrepreneurs say it, half a dozen CEOs tell me this. No, I don't like job descriptions, because once you tell people what they're doing, then they're like, that's all I'm doing. I'm not doing anything more than that. But what they don't realize is, without scope, there's all kinds of overlap and inefficiencies where people are stepping into each other's lanes. And it's like, they don't even, and we've all seen this in teams that we've worked with, especially you see it really quick with gap analyzers and L10s that come out of gap analyzers, is people don't even realize they're both have been working on the same thing for a stretch of time. And then when you get them in the same room, you start having a similar conversation. They're like, wait a minute, you've been working on that? I've been working on that. And so it's like, how much wasted time and inefficiency for two different people who weren't talking to realize they were both creating something that had taken them some hours. So I think job descriptions and creating lanes so that people, like Terryn was saying, can stay in their brilliance. Ben, I think that's really right, because it's not just including Eliza as an EA for Steve. Yeah, Steve needed an EA, but it's like, so did Darren. Darren needed Steve to have an EA. You know what I mean?
We at the very least just think of how much time is wasted daily in communication. Like, without those job descriptions where everybody's going, are you doing this? Are you doing this? If there's no org chart or structure set in place, and I have to communicate with 4 different people to get a project done because I don't know who's really in charge of it, like, that's so much time wasted throughout just a day, and texting and slacking and boxing and communication. If I had an hour block to sit down and really work on a project and deep dive into that, but 25 minutes of that is just me communicating, trying to figure out where I'm supposed to get the information for that project. Like, if you can remove that and put everybody in their direct lane, so I go, okay, I know the exact person I need to talk to do this thing, that cuts down so much waste, and it just makes your organization so much more efficient that you don't realize, because nobody tracks how much time they're wasting in communication a day. Like, people get lost. You sit down, how much time have you spent on your phone texting? You're like, oh my God, I've been texting for like an hour and a half today. That wasted time without those set lanes is just, I think most businesses overlook that, and it's draining.
Yeah, we do the gap analyzer app for so many different people, and we always see it on the daily tasks. It's like communication, email, messaging, Slack, and it's always like 1 to 2 hours. And you see it, everybody will put that down, and everybody's like, do I really spend 1 to 2 hours a day on communication?
I think, Terryn, you're doing a gap analyzer right now for an A-Cup team, right? Like, then we took John A-Cup's team through it last year for their initial gap analyzer. And then, John had the wisdom and the brilliance to say, hey, let's take the team back through that as we wind up this year, just to see how they're lining up. And then from the gap analyzer where we inventory everybody's daily, weekly, monthly duties they're doing, rolling it off into a delegate and elevate exercise. I think that Terryn, that's what you're in the middle of the team right now, right? Of like, what should still be a part of your role, or Gian in this role where it's now not just social media marketing management that you're doing anymore, but you actually are starting to lean into some project management stuff. So what on your plate no longer requires Gian's brilliance? That how can we elevate you up by delegating down and SOP out some of those things and find other people, if that's hiring it out or sourcing it to Collab team, that we can keep everybody in their lanes and always operating at their highest brilliance. I think that, that maybe Terryn, you want to speak to that? I know that's what you're in the middle of right now with those guys.
Yeah, exactly. And what you were hired for might have made you excited at the beginning, but now that you're in the job 6 months, in his situation, it's like, I had no idea I was going to be project managing, but I love it. I was hired to just do physical posts, social media, manage all this stuff. But now I'm managing projects, marketing, challenges, different things we got going on. And I'd rather be spending time on that than actually pushing the physical send button on scheduling the posts and realizing, okay, I can manage the social media without having to be the one to input this new post on 4 different platforms multiple times a week. That's something, somebody under me could do.
And even I think redirects, right? I think we don't even think about it, but like, how many times does the CEO, he or she is in a rut of, they've always gone to this person for this question, so that's who the go-to is. But when you've got good job descriptions and lining out what people are doing, it's like whoever that go-to person had been historically, they're able to say, hey, you should go talk to Eliza about that. Like strong redirects, because you've got good channels of who's owning what, right? But until you establish who's owning what, it's really hard to establish redirects. But once you establish who's owning what, to Ben's point, it cuts down on half the chatter, because somebody comes to you about something that's not in your lane and you're gonna be like, hey, I could help you with that, but that's not me. Like, I would go talk to Eliza. Eliza's the one that's owning that. I think the coolest part about EOS is Eliza probably has a scorecard that's tracked 5 different metrics on that one thing that guy's asking about, or that gal. I think that was one of the biggest things we were able to help Prime with at the beginning was Steve would have anxieties about certain numbers, and he'd come and he'd ask several different people for reports without all the people knowing what Steve was asking for. So they were all like doing busy work reports rather than, hey, let's roll that all up into a scorecard so Steve can show up one place every week and know that every itch that he has is being scratched through the scorecard of, hey, let's tell the story and how many leads are coming in and how many calls are there and what's the miss rate on the calls and how did that convert into sales and what does that do to our net and how did that go down to the sales guys and what's our dollar per opportunity. PCS has got some badass numbers in their scorecard. They're one of the most impressive scorecards, I think, but that came out of the one-offs that Steve was going to a bunch of different people for, and us saying, hey, let's knock down the noise, the communication noise, Ben, that you were talking about, and let's roll that up into one very centered place that each one of those scorecard items is owned by the person that owns that metric. And then they're a great knowledge base holder, so that when that question comes up, Steve knows right where to go to, or we know where to direct Steve back to because we have that out. So I think just putting a little forethought, in the beginning really, really helps with all the confusion and wasted time and inefficiencies downstream for sure.
Smooths everything out. And especially when it comes from the visionary, from the CEO, like everybody on the team wants to immediately be like, oh yeah, I can figure that out for you. But really, you don't want everybody going, oh yeah, I can figure that out for you, because you've got, like you said, 10 people working on the same report who are like, who can get it to the CEO first? Because nobody wants to disappoint the visionary. So to have that one person who is like, oh yeah, I already pulled that report last week, here it is. Again, cuts down the noise, communication chatter. It also reduces a lot of, inter-office anxiety. Like if an entire team's like, oh, I have to go get this report right now. Like you just raise the anxiety level of your whole team, when it could have just been, oh yeah, I actually pull that report every week. Here it is.
I've seen that literal thing happen. Like that, what you just lined out. And Terryn is the king at redirect. Like somebody will come to Terryn and he goes, yeah, no problem. Ben, would you get that to him? Because him and Ben have already had a conversation and Ben's been pulling that number for a long time. And so then it's like, and it beats down all the anxiety. And I think it's the fears that weren't even verbalized yet, right? Of when the visionary sees, oh, these guys are that on top of it, that I had to ask for that. Terryn had already had the conversation. Ben's already been pulling that for weeks. It also knocks down the other fears of, these guys know what they're doing. Like they showed up like that. What else have they been doing that I want to see? I think it just that confidence boost and keeps the visionary right more in their lane, because the visionary only starts meddling with stuff when they feel like something's not being handled the right way. They don't want to do that stuff. That was the reason they handed it off in the first place. That's not what their brilliance is, Thanks for tuning in. It's great seeing everyone.
See you all next week.
See ya.
Thank you for tuning in to the Ops Experts Club podcast. New episodes available every week on Spotify, iTunes, and everywhere you listen to podcasts. If you're curious about how some of the biggest names in entrepreneurship have scaled their businesses to the next level, check out some of our best content on this topic by going to foundationsthatscale.com/level-up. You can find the link in our bio and do your part to improve as an ops expert.